Welcome to another Rugby Obsession Deep Dive.
Great to be here. Today we're looking at quite a moving piece from Planet Rugby.
Yeah, it's titled Jeande de Villiers, Rugby is Not to Blame for Cornal Hendricks' Death. And just a reminder before we jump in, if you enjoy these deep dives, please do think about subscribing to Rugby Obsession wherever you get your podcasts.
Definitely helps us keep these conversations going.
So our aim today is really to explore the tributes that poured in for former Springbok Cornal Hendricks following his passing.
And understand the specific context, especially the points made by guys like Jeande de Villiers and Schalk Burger who knew him.
Exactly. We want to pull out the core insights from this source to get a clearer picture of Cornal Hendricks' impact, both, in the game and personally.
It's obviously tough news to discuss, dealing with his passing. He was only 37.
So young. But what really comes through in the article alongside the sadness is this incredible story of, passion and resilience.
Absolutely. The Force mentions he passed away from a heart attack. And this was about a decade after he was first diagnosed with quite a serious heart condition.
And that diagnosis is pretty crucial context, isn't it? Because back then, he was basically told his professional rugby career was finished.
Yeah, that he couldn't play again. Done.
But he just completely defied that, made this, frankly, amazing comeback in 2019.
With the Bulls, yeah. And stayed with them right up until this year, 2024.
That alone, it just tells you so much about his drive, his determination, his love for rugby.
It speaks volumes, and you see that reflected in what players like Jeande de Villiers and Schalk Burger said. They played with him, of course.
Right. Schalk Burger was talking about it on the Box Office podcast. He remembered playing alongside Cornal around 2014, 2015 for the Bulls.
And Burger specifically mentioned how everyone around Cornal, back when he got that diagnosis, really thought that was it for his rugby, because the condition was serious.
Understandably. You hear serious heart condition and professional sport, and you think, well, that's the end of the road.
Exactly. But then, like you said, the Bulls gave him that chance, that lifeline, back into the game.
And Berger noted just how good he was for them when he returned. Really exceptional.
But what Schalk seemed to really focus on, maybe even more than the on-field stuff, was the kind of energy Cornal brought.
Yes. He said the standout feature was his energy, especially in the changing room.
He talked about his sense of humor, and specifically, it was that laugh that was the standout feature.
That's such a great detail, isn't it? It just instantly paints a picture of the guy. It makes him seem very real.
It really does. You can almost imagine it. Berger also mentioned his success moving to center for the Bulls post-COVID.
Ah, yes, as part of that really successful Bulls team.
Berger called that the cherry on top of his career.
Yeah.
Great way to cap it off, despite everything.
And it was impressive watching that transition. Jeande de Villiers, he echoed a lot of those points about Cornal's character.
He described him as a phenomenal human being, really emphasized the positive impact he had, beyond just the try line.
De Villiers seemed keen to stress how Cornal genuinely touched people's lives. He saw rugby as Cornal's passion, absolutely, but also his platform.
His platform to create positive change, yeah. And that returning to the sport was because that's where he felt he could make that difference.
You see that reflected, de Villiers pointed out, in how his teammates talked about him. Just universal respect.
Yeah, de Villiers said when he heard the news, obviously terrible, but he immediately added something like, "Not a single person I have met has got anything bad to say about him."
It's all positive, and it's about the positive effect that he had. That kind of reaction, it tells you everything about the man's character.
It really does.
Now, there's a specific point in the article, and both the Bulls CEO Edgar Rathbone and Jeande de Villiers felt was important to address.
Ah, yes. This idea that maybe playing rugby again somehow worsened his condition or, contributed to his passing.
Which is a natural question people might ask, given the history.
Exactly. And de Villiers was very direct on this. He acknowledged those questions would come up.
But he really stressed that Cornal came back to rugby because he loved it. It was his passion, his happy place, the environment where he felt he could have that positive impact you mentioned.
Not because he felt he had to or anything like that. It was a choice driven by passion.
His words were pretty strong, actually. He said something like, "There will be people wanting to blame rugby in a way for this, but it's nothing like that."
Right. And then he added, it was a beautiful life, and we're just lucky that we could just share some of it with him.
That really hits home, doesn't it? It frames his return as something driven by his connection to the game and the community, not as a contributing factor to the tragedy.
Yeah, it felt important for them, for those close to him, to share that perspective. To clarify the narrative, I suppose.
So thinking about everything in this source, the sad news, the incredible comeback story, the glowing tributes about his personality, and that specific clarification about rugby,
Hmm.
it really paints a picture of a life lived with real passion and resilience.
Definitely a powerful story, despite the sad ending.
And if you find these kinds of discussions valuable, breaking down the stories behind the headlines, remember to subscribe to Rugby Obsession. It helps us bring you more deep dives like this one.
Absolutely.
Okay, so summing up. We've talked about the powerful words from Jeande and Schalk Burger, highlighted Cornal Hendricks' frankly unbelievable comeback against medical advice.
And discussed why those close to him felt it was crucial to state that rugby was his passion, not something to blame for his death.
We heard about his energy, that famous laugh, his success at Center for the Bulls, just his overall impact as a person using rugby as his stage.
The source material really builds this picture of someone who lived life fully with passion and incredible strength.
Right. And here's something to maybe mull over.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you think about how Cornal Hendricks was told definitively, you cannot play again. And yet, he found a way back. Not just back, but back to making a positive impact through the very thing he was told to give up. What does that whole story really tell us about, I guess, the intersection of intense personal passion, facing huge physical challenges, and maybe how we use our platforms, whatever they are, for good?
That's a deep question. That drive, that refusal to be defined by the setback.
Yeah. Something to think about. Well, thank you for joining us for this Rugby Obsession deep dive.
Thanks for listening.
We really appreciate you tuning in. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and we look forward to you listening to our next deep dive.